Sat for a few days, ready to do some nitrous hits. I actually had to work on my cold start. It wasn't as good. I actually had to mess with some settings. Pretty good. 66-degree coolant temp. E85. All right, so we got everything loaded up. We're gonna hit it as is. I softened up the tune-up, so we'll see what it makes on blower only, and then I'll give it a mild saucing and see where that takes us, right? Alright, I believe that this middle section here deserves an intermission and explanation. So, I put the car on the mild tune-up, it only made 550. I'm like, okay, something's wrong with this thing. And I put 2 degrees in it and it made 575. I think I got 580 out of it on a third hit. Then I showed the nitrous jets there and I went to spray it and it didn't spray. And at this point I'm kind of flustered. I'm like, okay, I have a misfire. I'm not really sure what it is. You know, do I press on? Do I try to spray it out of it? Do I mess with some things? So I messed with my injector phasing. That's one of the only things that I had changed. It didn't go away. I'm like, okay, I probably have an ignition problem. I had old wires in the car from the first time I put it together, and the old wires got really hot on the passenger side and just cooked. So this car has long tube headers. They just get super hot. They just dump heat. It's not like cast iron manifolds that hold it in pretty well. This thing is just frying the older, already kind of dried out wires. And so what I found out was the front corner was just looking awful. I put a wire in there because some of the other thing that I had burnt slightly, being the angle the header is at and the angle at the wire. You guys know that LS vehicles have like 20 different kinds of stock wires. So I fitted a wire that wouldn't touch it but was very old. So that's what cracked up a little bit. So moving on, I'm like, okay, I'm down about a cylinder. I may have about 580 on blower only, quote unquote. So I'm like, well, I don't want to waste a day, so I'll spray it. And like I said, I had trouble getting the spray to work. It's one of those days where it doesn't go right, so I wanted to get everything working even though I had a miss. so that the next time I went, I could profit off of it so that it wasn't a wasted trip. So here's all my hits in a row, and then I'm going to show a successful nitrous hit, which you can hear midway through the pull, a pronounced nitrous kit enabling. So now, on that last hit, you could hear the tiniest little change in power. So that was my very soft, I hope this works, pretty rich, a lot of timing out hit where I'm like, man, just work. I'm just struggling today and I don't want to go home with nothing. So let's just get my kit working. Please, like, I do this all day. Of course, my stuff would just give me fits, right? I'm sure some of you guys can appreciate this. So it did work. I'm like, great. Now I can, everything's working, everything looks good. Now I can back everything off and see what the spray will do and move forward. I had a super small jet in it, so I went right to the 100 jet because with the misfire and whatever else was going on, classically, like I said, with a blower, it compounds pretty hard. So you want to start small and make sure it doesn't go crazy on you. Okay, I had a bunch of issues. What would a dyno adventure be without a bunch of issues? I got them sorted out, and I just put 100 shot jetting in it, and it made 100 rear wheel. So with my softer tune-up, it's making 575, 580, and then on spray, it just did 675, and I have a ton of injector. So I'm gonna move up on my jetting and see what happens. So you just heard me explain everything, and what I missed to say was I had misfire. I had a bad plug wire, basically. I kind of thought that that was the deal, but I didn't really say it at that point. Obviously, it was really screwing me up. So here is where I mess with the tune-up quite a bit, and I play with jetting up and down, and you can tell the more I lean on this, the more heat I put into it, the more subsequent hits in a row. The car is, you can tell when the nitrous comes on, and also just as I keep hitting it, it gets worse and worse. You can see the car lunging on the dyno from misfiring, just bucking. So I'll just rapid fire these next few hits out so you can see that, focus on that, and we'll go over it from there. So here I just took a bunch of pictures because Jamie cleaned it the other day and it was looking super clean. I also just take photos when stuff is on the dyno. I figured I would show you guys just, decent not terrible, right? It's an okay looking car. It looks super clean. The bumper and stuff definitely needs to get addressed one day, but it's got some rock chips. Other than that, pretty clean car. Not terrible. Not bad looking. Certainly more fun than I ever thought it would be to build and drive. Definitely understand why people love this platform so much after doing all of this to it. And here is suspect, culprit, definitely, absolutely misfire number one. This is an older wire for sure. Like I said, I had to put a straight one on. I have nice hard 90 ones, but like I said, on that front primary, it hits partial bend. So I put this straight guy on here to get around it. And then, like I said, I have a lot of friends who are professional tuners, and they all agree that I should move to this plug and try it out. It is more expensive, but they're telling me I will absolutely notice a difference in this car, being that it's touchy on the gas pedal with the blower and all sorts of other things going on. They're saying this plug is miles better, idle, cold start, everything. So I'm keen to try it, so we're trying it. They are certainly much more expensive. I think it was around $80 for these plugs, so around $10 a piece versus NGK BR7EFs, which is what I normally run, which were what was in the car, and all of them were fine. None of them had melted tips or anything. I was happy to see that, obviously, but he said those are about $18 for a set of 8, average price. So, bit of a difference, but I'm interested to see what happens. I've had them sitting around for a long time. Here's the time to try them. Okay, so you've reached the 10-minute mark in the video, and we're going to do an overview. So the first hit here is, I should have noticed this, to be honest, but I was just too busy rushing around and not paying attention, because I always do that with my own vehicle. If you guys can remember, every time I do my own, it's always something, or I'm missing something, or I'm rushing. Whether or not it is anyone's fault other than my own, if I'm just being anxious, who knows? If I'm like, man, I better get a good result, or people on the internet will argue with me. Who knows what it is? Anyway, let's go on. So, biggest indicator here is it was pulling a bunch of fuel, and the car is fine. It doesn't need to have 16, 19, 13% out of it. I should have known better. It's trimming fuel because it has a bunch of unburnt in the exhaust, and it's running slightly rich on those cylinders. So this was the first hit on, what, about 14.8 up top, 11 down low, 15 degrees up top. And let's get right to the hit. All these are actually in perfect sequence this time. You guys are going to love it. The numbers are all matching. So I even had a little bit of wheel spin. It was cold, tiny bit rainy, so I anticipated this. So this is what wheel spin looks like. And it caught up and it made 548, and I was like, paw, what is wrong with you? Hopefully that's just mostly wheel spin. Anyway, we went right to hit number 2 and didn't have wheel spin. I rolled into it higher, so it wouldn't be such a shock down low. And I rolled into the pedal, making outstanding torque. But still about 575-ish rear wheel, not amazing. So this was hit number 2. So what, I had roughly 15 in it. So now let's go to the hit here, and you can see I did trim some fuel. It was still pulling more, and now it had about 16.8 degrees in it up top. It's using less duty cycle than it was. Also, big indicator, it's using less fuel. It's making less power. Everything's adding up, so it's down on power. Boost and everything was the same, so not sure what was going on there. Oh boy.
When you eat these, it's snack nut.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan, but
There's pretzels.
I'll snack on them. Oh, nice.
The little bunnies.
It's for everybody. So I put 2 degrees in it. It picked up some power. I was like, well, it's down. I don't know if I'll be able to research exactly why right now. I don't really want to waste the time. Let's move right on. And I have my largely untested nitrous kit, so I wanted to arm that, make sure everything is working, make sure it's spraying, make sure I had appropriate jetting, I wasn't wasting any time, all of my settings were hashed out. so that I could come back and that would be ready. Everything would be ready to rock. So this was my homework day, right? Everyone familiar with that? So still pulling fuel, still using not as much injector, for obvious reasons. So those are the two hits. Not awful, but not great. And it took me a little bit to realize that it was a miss. The longer I cruised on the dyno at cruising speed and just felt this, I'm like, okay. And I'm like, it's not cam surge. I'm at 3,500 RPM, and I'm getting this hesitation. And also, like right when you go to pull out, you could feel like it had a dead cylinder. It was unhappy, right? So here's the first spray. You'll notice how badly it declines between 2 and 3, because this is the ignition getting pulled out of it. So the ignition's getting pulled, and it's whacking it with a bunch of fuel. And then what's happening is closed loop is pulling the fuel out back to not submarine. So you can see I wrote no nitrous ... I'm like, what is going on here? So if we look, you can see like all sorts of funny business happening here. It's throwing a bunch of duty at it for the dry hit. And then it's like, what is happening? So now it's yanking. It's in the 10s. It's yanking 20. 19. I mean, it starts to even it out a little bit. Yeah, it just wasn't working out. So I'm like, what is going on here? Do I have my nitrous stuff here? Does it show? So it's showing nitrous stage 1, 100%, timing retard, 4 degrees out. So it's spraying here. It's technically spraying, but it just wasn't working. And I think what was happening is I thought my nitrous kit wasn't working because I felt nothing. And I think one of the reasons why is because of the misfire, because of the jetting and everything else. So I spent a ton of time investigating, like, what is going on here? And I weak bottle too, so I just wanted to hit it. I didn't have a lot of time to warm it up with me concerned about my low power. So I let it warm up later. You'll see the pressure comes way up. It works great. So you can see here the bottle heater's on, nitrous is enabled, and then here when you roll in, it kicks the kit on and the rolling retard. So I'm like, okay, so nitrous is cut off at RPM up here and whatever else. So I'm like, what? So, what's funny is going over these logs, I didn't even look at them that seriously. It looks like the whole time the nitrous was working. But I was so caught up with just I'm like, where's my pronounced thud, right? What is happening, ladies and gentlemen? So same thing, I go to hit it again. I just run into some issues. So we'll skip ahead. We'll look at, there was my decent motor hit. There's my failed nitrous 1. There's kind of failed nitrous 2. This is where I thought the kit wasn't working at all. Apparently it was just so screwed up. So this was a motor hit, I believe, or just a really small jet, but cleaned up. I think that's what this is. So 2, and this is a very small jet, but I cleaned up the tune everywhere. You can see I finally got the fuel right. So that looks like it's on motor. That is spray. That's finally when the spray worked. So we'll go to that. So this is the spray finally worked. 6. Let's go right to 6. I don't want to waste time with me really not knowing. So this was nitrous definitely pronounced on. This was cleaned up on a 52 jet. And then I went to a 62. So this 685 was on a 52 jet, working beautifully, but still has the misfire. So you can see here, it comes up. Doot, 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 doot. And then fuel goes way up. So fuel jumps from 41% to 58%. And you can see it's still yanking tons of fuel out because of the misfire. And I was putting too much fuel in it because I was anticipating it being, from what I've used dry nitrous, I was putting in dry fuel settings, and with the dead cylinder, it just wasn't working. So here you can see, 16 pounds, 6,600. Where was the kit shutting off? We'll go back to here. It was pulling 20% of fuel. I was just flooding the poor thing. And then you can see here, bottle heater, 929. So the -4 hits here, the -2 hits here. I'm finally getting everything started to clean up. Just not super happy with the numbers. What I really enjoyed seeing was the 52 jet is about 100 horsepower, and it was making 100 rear wheel. So it's nice to know that all of that stuff is working. This part of the equation is working. You can see here, I did clean it up a little bit more since, like I was saying, it was screwed up and it was misfiring. So this is cleaned up, so it's carrying a little bit better torque. And then one thing I want to show you guys, hopefully we remember. Now we'll do it now. I won't remember. I know me and you guys know me. So that is blower today and 100 shot today. So if we go back to when I sprayed it, 200 shot attempt. Let's do that. So this was on motor. I detuned it to about 330. So let's go to tune number 2 here. So this was on motor with the truck intake, sloppy stage 2, long tubes, exactly the way the car is minus the blower. And then this was on spray with a little bit of too much taken out of it. So 469, 492. Yeah, so let's do for 2 and 6 is our comparison. That's not 2, Matt. 2 and 6. So what you see here is this massive hit of torque. Huge hit of torque, right? So what are we going from? Let's turn on the cursor here. Let me show you guys. So we're going from 260 foot-pounds to within like 500, less 300 RPM. I'm almost doubling my torque, and I'm certainly doubling it about here. This is massive inrush, and what I don't want is a positive displacement blower with all the boost, making peak torque at 5,000 and saucing it right before 5,000 and getting a massive cylinder pressure spike and knocking a rod out of this thing because it makes torque so late. Like, look at some of these hits. 5,200 peak torque. So we look at that nitrous blower twin disc, and then we look at 7. Yes, 685. So what you can see here is this is the blower coming up, and then this is what I was telling you about in the nitrous tune in my other video, post getting on the dyno, with the -4. I learned this from Chris Ortiz at Modern Performance and Tuning. When you're spraying big or you're stacking or everything else, pulling an initial, people always talk about pulling some timing for your shot, but usually that's global with however they're using it, whatever ECU, whatever way they're pulling ignition timing, it's kind of global. So they take out, it makes best power with 2 degrees out, safe power. So say they're running 150 shot, they're on gasoline, they run 26 degrees up top, they pull 2 degrees from the nitrous enable all the way up. And what happens here is you get a huge torque spike, which beats up the motor. It really hits the bearings hard. It hits the rods real hard if you got stock rods. And everything we've learned over the years is mitigating that big torque number, or you just don't want to smash the thing with a bunch of torque down low and bend a rod. I even have timing pulled out of this car. You can see down low, I'm limiting it on spark from like idle up to 3,500. It will make more torque. It has made tons of torque down low. And I'm like, man, I just don't feel safe with that. It's not like it doesn't just fry the tires off anyway. I've seen a lot of CTSV guys, especially like Fran shots from RPM, talk about how they have the car well tuned makes so much bottom end, all it does is fry tire. They actually detune those CTSVs so that they are more traction oriented. They're capable of so much bottom end power that they just can't hook the tire. So they mess with power management with, stock ECU. You don't have that many options as far as a standalone for yanking timing on a launch or something else built into like a Holly. So what's really neat about this standalones to control nitrous kits is you can yank on the hit. So what you see here is a much cleaner ride of 100 shot. So I'm pulling 4 on the hit, and if I didn't have the misfire, you could clean this up too. It's almost indistinguishable. It's almost hard to tell when the kit is coming on. So which one was, let's go to number 2. So this was motor and then spray, and then this is blower only with a misfire, and then this is cleaned up blower with 100 shot. So it's neat to see that it's fading in so nicely that it's hard to see any really raw spike. protecting. I mean, now it's easier to feel comfortable, right, with like a 200 shot coming on top of the blower, because you can yank a ton and make it very smooth, and then as the car accelerates through the power band, you can fade that back out. So then what you get is a smoother power band, you can put down better power, and you're not gonna just trash the engine, is the really big one. You're not just gonna squirt a rod. So talking about stacking power adders safely, all of that stuff is done for me. Nitrous working, going for 150. So this was 9:40 p.m. You can see here, I'm yanking, I'm turning on at 4,500. I also got more comfortable since the ignition was working good. I started enabling at 45 instead of like 52. So those are all reasons. I made my window small, I got everything organized, everything was looking good, and then I could spread everything out. I was much more comfortable with hitting it lower with a little bit more ignition retard and then fading it out up top. So you can see all of that working there too. And then you can also, it also might be dipping power slightly because it has too much ignition retard, or it's because it's getting fuel before it's getting nitrous, and you can actually delay your fuel ramps and delays here. So I can delay that more, or I can change the ramp too. And I can, spending more time, you can get rid of this hump. Not that this, you can't really feel this anyway, because the power comes rushing on seconds, quarter of a second later, all that power comes flying in. So I just wanted to show all of these comparisons for if you guys want to know. I know everybody watches the back half here for the technical overview, right? So having a blower car that has peaky torque, like it's torque everywhere, but it makes peak torque very late. And what you want to get rid of is really late high torque situation on these stock bottom end cars. So yanking a little bit, I call it a rolling retard. So it comes in, pulls a bunch, and then fades the advance as you accelerate, which you can see here. So just for fun, because I am a masochist, and I just was like, well, it'd be cool to see a better result. So I pressed on with more and more jet, and look what happened. So here you can see I was messing with it. It was getting hotter. It dropped 2 horsepower on the same tune-up. I just pulled fuel, and I fixed a bunch of things on hit number 8, and it went down. And what you can see is here is this ugly jagged lines. So what we're going to do is 7 and 9. And what you can see here is I dropped a bunch of power. You can see the misfire happening now. I put more nitrous in it, and I did more bottle pressure on 9 and 10. And to show you, I put a 62 jet in, and we'll take a peek at this log. It's pulling even more fuel because it's misfiring so bad. Over 20% of fuel out. And then this is the nitrous kick coming on. You can see the rolling retard, 4 degrees out, 2 degrees out, 900. I went over 1,000 PSI because I thought for whatever reason I'm not getting enough bottle pressure. So I upped my bottle pressure, upped my jet, and it just made everything worse. And I'm pretty sure my plugs were plenty tight for this. They look great. They're super small gap on the BR7s. And that's where I'm like, it's just this wire. I can't just nitrous out this misfire. I'm just making it worse. Obviously, there's only so much spark energy getting to the cylinder. I'm asking for more spark energy. It's falling shorter, blah, blah, blah. So that's what you're seeing here is I jetted up twice and power fell twice. So I'm like, dude, quit while you're ahead, go home. So I went home, found that bad toasty boy, and did, like I showed in the video, I put in the TR8iXs, and then what I also did is I had a viewer send in pink Taylors, which people were telling me these are pretty expensive wires. They're a little long for this application, but the hooping here doesn't really bother me. One of the biggest things I was worried about installing these is I would make them filthy, and I did. Like I got fingerprints all over them that are just filthy. So I didn't get to drive the car yet, but Jamie did take it out and go shopping, and she says it's night and day better. So it would be nice to, I put the 52 jet back in it. It'll be nice to get it to the dyno again and follow up on all this, right? Did we learn? Am I just blowing smoke? Was there an improvement at all? Am I going to make more power? So I'm hoping, obviously, we make more power. I'd like to see about 620 something on blower and then spray it to like 750 or more. We'll see how easy it wants to make power then. But I'll probably cut myself off at 750. I can't use it. I mean, this thing has been so good to me. Why push it harder than that for now, right? As time goes on, who knows what will happen. So that's where we are. I believe that's it. I went over as much as I can think of right now as far as like the tune and everything else. So hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you have questions about this whole thing, the nitrous, the everything else, the misfire, all sorts of stuff. So that's the gist of it. I got the overlay in there. I got the hits. I think I got everything. Goodbye.